Hello, Justin back for the final installment on building the Hugelkultur raised garden bed. So since you've last seen it, all I did was put down all my homemade compost. Got a nice even layer of that on top of everything. Then I got a bunch more leaves from my stash back there and I piled them up, or actually I didn't pile them up, I spread them out in the lawn and ran over them with my lawnmower with the bagger on there and mulched them all up fine. Then I put a good layer of that down all over everything. And then I was going to use those wood chips in the back corner of the yard, but I decided a finer, looser mulch would be better for the top layer as far as planting into it goes. I'm not going to plant into this for maybe a couple weeks or so. I'd like everything to settle down, settle in, get watered in. I'll probably come out and water it regularly. And in fact, tonight the whole garden could use a watering, so I think I've got one of those old-fashioned sprinklers that used to run through as a kid. Julia loves that thing. But I think I'm going to set it up over here and just have it water this area, and it should get most of the Hugelkultur and the other beds. So I guess that's it. I put this layer of straw down. I had that, it was about half a bale maybe, and I already had that for use in the chicken coop in their nest boxes. So again, that was free. So other than the azomite, which I paid for a long time ago, a bag of that lasts a pretty long time. I don't put a ton of it in the soil because it's not really necessary. I maybe used about a third of a bag, and they're 40-pound bags. I put that in there, and I guess that cost me something a long time ago. I bought it a year ago or something like that, I don't know. So I'm not really going to count it as costing much for me on this point, but that's an optional thing. You could leave it out if you wanted to do this, and basically the whole point of this is use what you've got. I've done a lot of reading lately on permaculture techniques, and that is farming and gardening techniques which utilize sustainable methods, and they utilize resources that are abundant and sustainable and replenishable, and they work with nature instead of against it. So instead of using chemical pesticides and fertilizers and things like that, I'm mimicking nature, I'm mimicking the forest floor and how things break down naturally in nature, so to grow a garden. And kind of the cool thing about this is no matter where you are in the world, you can find logs, branches, leaves, sticks. Unless you're in the Sahara Desert or something. But even then, not in the Sahara, but even in a lot of places in Africa, in the Serengeti, where it's pretty barren, there's still trees, there's old dead sticks and logs and organic matter that you could pile up and make a garden out of, because over time it will break down. It's just how it works. It's how nature is, and I love that. You should have seen all the bugs, I don't know how many different kinds of bugs and things I saw pulling those logs over here, because they've been sitting back there eating on those logs for 3 years or whatever. So all kinds of weird bugs in here, and some people might think that's weird or gross and everything, but that's how nature works. Those bugs are doing a job. They're breaking down, they're eating that woody material and those leaves, and they're breaking stuff down, and they're pooping in there, and they're peeing in there, and whatever kind of poop and pee bugs have. And the worms, I sheet mulched it. You can see a little bit of the cardboard underneath there. The worms eventually, as it's wet and everything, and it'll start breaking down as well, and the worms will eat through it, and they'll come up into the bed and start doing their magic on everything in there too. So my plan for this is, I think I mentioned it before, I'm going to plant beans in this, but like I said, I'm going to wait a little while and let everything settle and start percolating. Let that grass clippings and the other green materials I put in there start to compost down and add nitrogen and start the whole process of decomposition. But another permaculture technique or not really a technique, but principle of permaculture that I'm going to use in this bed is that nature doesn't monoculture. Monoculture meaning in nature you'll never see a field of corn or a field of one thing. You'll never see a field of wheat. That's something that humans have come up with, and it's a great thing for feeding millions of people. It makes sense. But as far as growing your own food and sustainability and just being, just wanting to grow food for your family, nature doesn't monoculture, so we're not going to do that in this. So what that means is we're going to polyculture, multiple cultures, and that means you interplant different things together which will be beneficial to one another. A classic version of this would be in a Mexican or South American technique called the Three Sisters, where you plant corn, beans, and squash together, and the corn grows up tall, the beans can grow up the squash, as long as they're like pole type beans. These are bush beans and they don't get that tall, but pole beans will climb up things. So corn, pole beans that climb up the corn, it gives them something to climb up, and then squash grows those big old leaves right there and shades out the soil and keeps everything cool, and it's sort of a mulch of sorts. So what I'm going to do here as far as polyculture is along the top of the bed and maybe 4 or 5 places I'm going to plant some squash, which is going to help shade everything pretty well. Then along the sides, maybe a little lower, along you know, kind of in between the squash maybe, I'm going to plant some cucumbers, pickling cucumbers, because I'd really like to pickle. I do home fermentation. I made my own sauerkraut, and I'd like to make my own home fermented pickles. It's really easy. If you're interested, just look it up on YouTube or Google. I mean, you can make your own pickles, pickle all kinds of different vegetables, make your own sauerkraut, and then you can have those beneficial, the lactobacillus, the beneficial microbes in your gut that a lot of people are missing in their diets. Even the sauerkraut you get at the store and the pickles you get at the store, they've been pasteurized to give them longer shelf life, or so that they don't need to be refrigerated, and that kills the beneficial bacteria, and it kills the bad bacteria, which is the point of it, and that's a good thing. But if you ferment your vegetables correctly, it won't allow for the growth of the bad bacteria, and the beneficial bacteria will take over. So the pickling cucumbers, so squash along the top, pickling cucumbers along sort of the middle, and then kind of all sprinkled about, I'm going to grow some more beans as a nitrogen fixer, and I like beans. They're good. So I guess that's it. This is the end of this. I'll probably do more videos on this later on when things are growing in it. And it does look quite humpy and big, but I've read that it will settle and break down as it breaks down over time. When you build these large scale, like 6 feet high, I've read that they'll actually sink almost a foot in the first year. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Justin signing off.